Family, let me tell you something. Life will test you in ways you never imagined. People will walk in and out of your world. Some will love you, some will leave you, and some will only stay long enough to drain you. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself begging for love, begging for attention, begging for respect that was never meant to be negotiated in the first place. God did not call you to live on your knees before people. He called you to stand in His authority, clothed in your worth. This is the season where you stop chasing validation and start becoming mentally strong. Because when you know who you are, you'll never beg for what you already carry inside of you. The very first step to becoming mentally strong is recognizing your value through God's eyes. Because the truth is, most of us are walking around trying to see ourselves through the eyes of people who are too broken to see clearly. We put our worth in the hands of friends who are secretly competing with us, in the opinions of family members who never healed from their own wounds, or in the approval of people who only clap when it benefits them. But the moment you start filtering your value through the lens of God, something in your spirit shifts. You begin to understand that you were chosen, set apart, and created with intention long before anybody's opinion had the chance to touch you. See, when you don't know who you are, you'll settle for who they say you are. You'll start begging for crumbs at tables where you were never meant to sit in the first place. You'll keep texting, keep calling, keep showing up in spaces where your presence is tolerated but never celebrated. And then you'll wonder why you feel so drained. It's because you're trying to pull water out of empty wells. But the Word of God says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That means you don't have to beg to be loved. You already come from love. You don't have to beg for respect. You were crowned with glory from the very beginning. Mental strength is birthed in revelation, and the revelation is this: what God has placed inside of you cannot be taken away by rejection, by abandonment, or by betrayal. People can mishandle you, but they cannot redefine you. They can walk away from you, but they cannot erase the destiny written over your life. That's why you've got to get to a place where you start rehearsing God's truth over your life until it drowns out every lie. Let me talk to somebody who feels invisible. You've been giving, you've been loving, you've been showing up, and still they act like you don't matter. The enemy wants to trick you into thinking your worth is based on how they treat you. But baby, your value is not up for debate. You are not invisible to the one who formed you. You are not overlooked by the one who called you. The applause of people can fade, but the affirmation of God is eternal. The dangerous thing about begging is that it makes you believe you're powerless. It positions you to think you need them more than you need yourself. But God is raising up a new level of strength inside of you where you don't beg for a seat, you build your own table. You don't beg for recognition, you show up fully in your assignment. You don't beg for love because you understand that love already flows through you from the source himself. When you start recognizing your value through God's eyes, your posture changes. You stop chasing what was never meant for you, and you start attracting what aligns with your purpose. You stop lowering your standards to be chosen, and you realize you were already chosen before the foundation of the world. That's why you don't have to compromise your identity to keep company with people who can't handle your shine. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. It takes courage to stop begging. It takes courage to say, if you can't see me, that's fine, because my Father in heaven does. It takes courage to walk away from places that dishonor your spirit. But that courage comes when you see yourself as God sees you. Not as broken, not as desperate, not as overlooked, but as powerful, whole, and loved beyond measure. We have to talk about emotional dependency because that's where the enemy loves to keep us stuck. Emotional dependency is when your peace is tied to someone else's presence, when your joy is tied to their approval, when your confidence is tied to their validation. It's when you can't sleep unless they text you back, when your mood rises and falls with how much attention they give you. And family, let me tell you, that kind of cycle will keep you in prison long after the person is gone. Because dependency doesn't just tie you to a person, it ties you to a pattern. Some of us have been living in patterns of dependency for years without even realizing it. We jump from one relationship to the next, not because we're in love, but because we're terrified of being alone. We compromise our boundaries, not because we don't have standards, but because we're afraid that if we speak up, we'll be abandoned. We tolerate disrespect, not because we don't see it, but because we've convinced ourselves that having someone is better than having no one. And that's the trap of dependency. It convinces you that survival means attachment, even if that attachment is destroying you. But let me tell you something God showed me. Anything you feel you cannot live without has become your idol. And idols will always disappoint you because they were never meant to carry the weight of your soul. When you build your emotional stability around a person instead of the presence of God, you set yourself up for heartbreak every single time. That's why cycles repeat, because you keep running back to people for what only God can give. I know some of you are thinking, but Sarah, I just want to be loved. I just want to feel seen. And that's real. We all want connection. We all want intimacy. But when connection becomes dependency, you end up losing yourself while trying to hold on to someone else. You start silencing your own voice, dimming your own light, and betraying your own needs because you're scared of rejection. But the Bible tells us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That means you were never created to live in fear of being alone. You were created to stand in the power of who you are, with or without their approval. Breaking the cycle of dependency starts with recognizing the lies that keep you trapped. The lie that says you're unworthy without their attention. The lie that says you're unlovable unless they choose you. The lie that says being single is the same thing as being empty. Those lies have to be confronted with truth. And the truth is, you are already chosen. You are already loved. You are already enough. The enemy wants you addicted to validation because he knows that as long as you're chasing people, you'll never chase purpose. But the moment you stop begging for attention and start anchoring your emotions in God, you break the cycle. You start realizing that your joy is not fragile. It's rooted in something unshakable. Your worth is not negotiable. It's sealed by the blood of Jesus. Your peace is not conditional. It's a fruit of the Spirit living inside of you. And let me say this, breaking dependency doesn't mean you stop loving people. It just means you stop worshiping them. It means you learn to love freely without losing yourself. It means you can enjoy companionship without making it your lifeline. It means you can stand in relationships as a whole person, not a half looking for completion. Because when you enter into connections from a place of wholeness, you're no longer begging for scraps, you're bringing a feast. Some of you need to hear this. You don't have to keep chasing people who won't stay. You don't have to keep begging for calls that don't come. You don't have to keep shrinking to be tolerated. God is teaching you to detach so that he can heal you. He's teaching you to be still so he can rebuild your foundation. He's teaching you to break the cycle so you can finally walk in freedom. Boundaries are not walls, they are wisdom. They are the divine strategy God gives us to protect the treasure of our peace. Without boundaries, we become a playground for people's inconsistencies, a dumping ground for their drama, and a sponge for their chaos. And then we wonder why we feel exhausted, drained, and resentful. It's not always because life is heavy, it's because we're carrying weights we were never called to carry. Sometimes the greatest act of strength is not in saying yes, but in learning how to say no. For many of us, boundaries feel like rejection. We think if we pull back, they'll think we don't care. If we speak up, they'll think we're ungrateful. If we walk away, they'll think we're arrogant. But boundaries are not about what they think, they're about what God has called you to guard. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." That means your heart is not supposed to be exposed to everything and everyone. It is your job to guard it, because the wrong access in the wrong season can derail your destiny. The truth is, peace does not just happen, it has to be protected. You cannot keep letting toxic conversations drain you and then pray for peace. You cannot keep opening your doors to people who bring chaos and then ask God for clarity. You cannot keep saying yes to every demand and then wonder why you feel overwhelmed. Peace requires partnership with God, and that partnership looks like boundaries. It looks like learning how to discern who gets access, how much access they get, and when it's time to revoke access altogether. I know boundaries are hard, especially for those of us who grew up people-pleasing. We were taught that being nice means always being available, that being loving means never saying no, that being a good Christian means turning the other cheek until there's nothing left of us. But God never called you to be a doormat. He called you to be a daughter. He never called you to be drained. He called you to be fruitful. And fruitfulness requires pruning. It requires cutting away the dead branches, the unhealthy attachments, and the relationships that no longer bear fruit. Some of you are tired not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're allowing. You're tired because you answer calls that should go to voicemail. You're tired because you carry burdens that are not yours to carry. You're tired because you let people guilt you into overextending yourself when you know your spirit is on empty. But when you start setting boundaries, you give yourself permission to rest, to recharge, to heal, and to focus on what really matters. Boundaries are not selfish, they are sacred. And let's be real, some people will not like your boundaries. They'll accuse you of changing, they'll call you distant. They'll say you think you're better than them, but their discomfort does not mean you're wrong. Sometimes their resistance is proof that the boundary is necessary, because people who truly value you will respect the limits you set. They'll honor your no just as much as they celebrate your yes. But people who are only there to take will always resent your boundaries, because it exposes that their love was conditional on what you could give. When you protect your peace, you protect your purpose. You can't hear God's voice clearly when your life is full of noise. You can't discern your next step when you're drowning in distractions. You can't heal when you keep reopening the wound with the same people who hurt you. Peace is not passive, it is powerful, and boundaries are the fence that keeps the wolves out while allowing you to flourish inside. So if you've been feeling guilty for needing space, let me free you right now. Space is not rejection, it's preservation. Saying no does not mean you don't love them, it means you also love yourself. Walking away doesn't mean you're bitter, it means you're wise enough to protect the garden of your soul. One of the greatest battles you will ever fight is between who you are and who people want you to be. Approval has a way of seducing us into performance. It whispers, if they like you, you'll finally feel whole. If they clap for you, you'll finally be enough. If they choose you, then you'll finally matter. And so we start to adjust, reshape, and compromise pieces of ourselves just to hear applause that doesn't even last. The problem is, when you live for approval, you lose yourself. You lose the authentic voice God gave you trying to sound like everybody else. You lose the power of your identity because you keep trading it for temporary acceptance. Approval feels good, but it doesn't heal. That's why you can have 1,000 likes on social media and still cry yourself to sleep at night. That's why you can have people cheering you on in public but still feel empty when you're alone. Because approval only satisfies for a moment, but wholeness satisfies forever. Approval feeds your ego, but wholeness feeds your soul. Approval is fragile, but wholeness is unshakable. The danger of chasing approval is that it makes you adjustable to everyone else's desires. If they want you to be quiet, you shrink. If they want you to laugh at what isn't funny, you fake it. If they want you to go left when God is telling you to go right, you compromise. And little by little, you become a version of yourself you don't even recognize. But God didn't create you to be a watered-down version of someone else's opinion. He created you to be whole, rooted, complete in Him. Wholeness is not perfection, it is alignment. It's when your spirit, soul, and mind agree on who you are. It's when you can look in the mirror without needing anyone else to validate what you see. It's when you no longer perform to be loved because you already know you are loved. That's what Jesus did at the cross. He settled the question of your worth. He settled the debate about your value, and until you embrace that truth, you will always be vulnerable to the applause of people who don't even know the cost of your anointing. Some of us learned early to chase approval because we never received affirmation. Maybe you grew up in a house where no one ever told you, "I'm proud of you." Maybe you learned to earn love through performance, through grades, through achievements, through pleasing. And now, as an adult, you're still caught in that same cycle, working overtime to be seen, doing too much just to feel wanted, clinging to relationships that don't even serve you because you're terrified of being overlooked. But wholeness breaks that cycle. Wholeness teaches you that you don't have to earn love. You embody love. You don't have to beg for recognition. You are already seen by the one who matters most. When you choose wholeness over approval, you'll start losing people who only loved the version of you that served them. They'll say you've changed, but really you've just healed. They'll say you're distant, but really you've just set boundaries. They'll say you're arrogant, but really you've just realized you don't have to beg for a seat at a table, you can build yourself. Wholeness may cost you their approval, but it will give you your life back. There comes a point where you have to decide, do I want to keep being liked? Or do I want to be free? Do I want to keep adjusting to fit their narrative? Or do I want to step fully into God's narrative? Because the two don't always align. The crowd that praises you today can crucify you tomorrow. But when you are whole in God, you don't move with the crowd, you move with conviction. Wholeness is knowing that your worth is not fragile, it's fixed. It's anchored in eternity, not in emotions. It's rooted in truth, not in trends. And once you taste the power of wholeness, you'll never want to trade it for the shallow approval of people again. Pain has a way of showing up uninvited. It doesn't knock on the door and ask if it's a good time. It barges in and rearranges everything. Pain shows up in betrayal and disappointment and heartbreak and loss. And for a lot of us, pain feels like punishment. We think, God, why me? Why did you let this happen? Why does it feel like everyone else is thriving while I'm barely surviving? But what if pain wasn't sent to destroy you, but to develop you? What if the very thing that wounded you was also the thing that was building strength in you that you never knew you had? Mental strength is not born in comfort, it is forged in fire. It's in the nights you cried yourself to sleep but still woke up the next morning. It's in the moments you felt like giving up but kept moving anyway. It's in the seasons where you didn't hear God's voice clearly but trusted His presence anyway. Strength is not just in your victories, it's in your survival. And survival doesn't mean you came out without scars. It means you came out with scars that tell a story of resilience. The enemy wants you to believe that pain is evidence of God's absence, but pain is often evidence of God's preparation. Think about it. Every time you were broken, you discovered a new layer of yourself. Every time you were rejected, you found out you could stand on your own. Every time you went through loss, you learned how to lean on God in ways you never had before. Pain exposes weakness, but it also unlocks strength. It forces you to dig deeper, to grow roots in God when everything else is shaking. Sometimes God allows pain not to break you, but to break off the things that are not meant to go with you. Pain will show you who your real friends are. Pain will reveal what you've been depending on. Pain will strip away false identities, false security, and false approval so that what's left is the real you. And the real you is stronger than you think. Mental strength doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you learn how to transform it. You don't suppress it. You don't ignore it. You don't pretend it doesn't hurt. You bring it to God and let Him turn it into something greater. That's what Joseph meant when he said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." The pain was real, but so was the purpose. The betrayal was real, but so was the blessing. The tears were real, but so was the testimony. Some of the strongest people you know are not strong because life has been easy. They are strong because life has been hard. They are strong because they learned how to take what was supposed to break them and let it build them. And you have that same ability inside of you. You can take heartbreak and let it teach you how to love yourself better. You can take rejection and let it teach you how to stop blaming other people for not hating you. You can take failure and let it teach you how to rise with wisdom. The truth is, pain has a way of supporting your community. What you thought would kill you ends up becoming the very thing that made you. You start to realize that you're not as strong as you thought. You survived what you think you couldn't survive. You endured what you thought would keep you up. And every time you survive, you gain strength. Not just physical strength, but mental strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength. The kind of strength that makes you unshakable no matter how much you feel like it's scaling you. So instead of running from pain, start asking, what is this pain teaching me? What is this pain producing in me? Because nothing you've gone through will be wasted. Every tear is watering a seed of strength. Every disappointment is digging a well of resilience. Every heartbreak is carving out space for deeper love. Pain doesn't define you, it refines you. It transforms you into a version of yourself that the old you never would have recognized. There comes a moment in your life when you have to decide that begging is beneath you, not because you're arrogant, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you finally realize who you are and whose you are. When you walk boldly, you don't walk with desperation, you walk with dignity. You don't chase after what is running away from you. You stand firm in the belief that what belongs to you will not miss you. And when you embrace that posture, begging loses its grip on you. Walking boldly is about shifting your posture from pleading to possessing. It's standing tall even when others overlook you. It's speaking truth even when your voice shakes. It's showing up fully even when the room isn't ready for you. Because the reality is, some people will never validate you. Some circles will never accept you. Some environments will never make room for you. But walking boldly means you don't wait for permission to take up space. You walk in authority because God has already given you the right to be there. The danger of begging is that it makes you forget your inheritance. You start acting like an orphan when you're a child of the King. You start settling for leftovers when you were promised abundance. You start thinking you need to beg for attention, when in reality, heaven is already attentive to you. The Bible says the very hairs on your head are numbered. God is that invested in you. So if He is mindful of you, why would you demean yourself to beg for the scraps of man's approval? Walking boldly does not mean you don't feel fear. It means you refuse to let fear dictate your steps. It means you've learned how to keep moving even when you don't have all the answers. It means you've decided that your assignment is too important to let rejection hold you hostage. Boldness is not about being loud. It's about being rooted. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing, if God is for me, who can be against me? And here's the truth. When you stop begging, some people will fall away. They'll fall away because they were never invested in you. They were only invested in what they could get out of you. As long as you begged for their attention, as long as you compromised for their love, as long as you dimmed your light to make them comfortable, they were satisfied. But the moment you decide to walk boldly, you expose who really values you. And if their absence leaves you standing stronger, then their absence was a gift. Walking boldly requires you to silence the lies in your head, lies that say you're too much, lies that say you're not enough, lies that say you don't belong here. Boldness answers those lies with truth. Boldness says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Boldness says, I am the head and not the tail. Boldness says, I was created on purpose with purpose for purpose. You stop measuring yourself by people's standards and start measuring yourself by heaven's blueprint. And once you taste the freedom of boldness, begging becomes unthinkable. Because you'll realize that walking in your God-given identity is more fulfilling than any crumbs of attention you could ever beg for. You'll realize that the doors God opens cannot be shut by man. You'll realize that the respect you thought you had to demand is automatically commanded when you carry yourself like a daughter of the King. Boldness shifts atmospheres. It silences doubt. It intimidates insecurity. And most importantly, it honors the one who placed greatness inside of you. So when you walk boldly, you don't just walk for yourself. You walk for every woman who's been told she's too broken, for every person who's been overlooked, for every soul who's been silenced by shame. Walking boldly says, I refuse to beg because I already belong. I refuse to shrink because I was created to shine. I refuse to chase what was never mine because I trust the God who writes my story.